And next up, we have the pleasure of having Irfan Hakim from Accenture here to tell us about finding, using, and shaping Pan-Canadian FHIR standards. Irfan is a data and AI consultant with Accenture Consulting. His background is in mental health, digital solutions evaluation, and patient-centered care. Irfan assists clients in developing Pan-Canadian profiles, implementation guides, and FHIR implementations. He is a co-chair of the SNOMED on FHIR working group and a faculty member at the University of Toronto. And with that, I will pass to Irfan. Are you there, Irfan?
Yes. Sorry.
Lovely.
I'm just between two different screens. I'm just trying to focus on which one because it just keeps switching them. So my apologies.
No worries. Are you right for sharing?
Yes. I am now. I hope folks can see my can see the screen.
Yes, perfect. That's great. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Awesome. Well, welcome everyone, and thank you, Linda, for having me be part of this workshop. It was an incredible experience last year, and I'm really happy to be back again this time. So for everyone on the call, it's gonna be a walkthrough of standards development lifecycle for some of our Pan-Canadian and some of our other jurisdictional specifications as well, what that looks like. I'll walk you through how we go about determining which specifications to focus on, talking about why there are the relevant ones that we need to focus on based on certain legislation requirements, some of the policy requirements. How do we shape and form our specifications based on that? What does it look like to create FHIR specifications at a national level? And I've already said at the jurisdictional level, and then make it even more use case specific or implementation specific as we go along. And through the creation of this, like, what does the process look like of collecting, first focusing on the right type of specification, focusing on the collection of requirements, actually creating it, and then testing it out. We're not going to focus too much on, so let me just advance the slide here. So as I was talking, like, what does the formation look like? What does the scope setting look like? Identifying the right actors, the right use cases, who's going to be using this specification, defining the requirements, focusing on the profiling aspect of it, doing any of the mapping that Lloyd was talking about, and putting that through the validating cycle, making sure that we update our specifications so that it's stable, it's been tested in real world, what does it look like, that sort of stuff. And then, of course, the conformance testing, going into projectathons, plugathons, connectathons, and testing this out with vendors, sitting with them and getting to know what are some of the bugs in some of our specifications, what needs to be resolved so that like we can make our specifications as perfect as possible, whether that be instructions on how to use certain profiles or additional guidance, or actually making some of those technical design changes as well. All of those are kind of covered in conformance. We're just going to be focusing today on the formation and scope setting side of it today, and then on the tail end of it, the conformance side. We'll get started with the formation and scope setting stuff right now, and I'll just dive into it. If anyone has any questions at any point, just feel free to speak in. I don't think I can see any comments in the chat, unfortunately. So if you can raise your hand, I'll keep it monitoring here. And Linda, if you could just...
And I can let you know. Yeah, thanks.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Stop me anytime. I'll also take questions at the end, of course. It's going to be that same discussion style. Just I'll get started. That's all. I won't take too much time here. So when it comes to FHIR specifications, at the very bottom here, we have the FHIR-based specification, which kind of covers, um, it's 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 use case agnostic. There's um, it's just all of the FHIR profiles, any of the structure that everything needs to be in. It's defined at a very broad level. It's the global foundation that is covered, and it talks about any and all exchange mechanisms that can be used um, for any kind of interoperability need that you have for any system in healthcare. Um, then you kind of take that, and it's kind of been you've gotten input from any and all kind of clinicians out there. A lot of the developers have sat down and worked on it for for a number of decades now, and you take that, you take something like that, and you bring it to a national level. Then you kind of focus on um, constraining then those base specifications in a national baseline to talk about um, how does that get kind of reflected in some of the policies that, for example, Canada has, any of the um, legal constraints that we need to have, any of the security related stuff, and what are some of the other requirements that we as Canadians have. Some of the constraints can be like certain patient health safety regulations that need to be focused on when it comes to patient information exchange, something like that. Um, those levels of constraints are put and focused on at the national baseline level. When you go even further in for the national core, that's where you kind of start now defining reusable profiles, extensions, value sets, stuff that's more common in its clinical use or administrative use, or can be used for reused for uh, certain use cases as well. So you kind of broad use cases. So you go down even further that way. I will clarify a little bit more between what the difference between national baseline and national core is. It's almost similar, but I'll get to that later in our in the presentation here. And then finally, you get to take that national core, go even more specific, now start defining it, tailoring it to certain data requirements and workflows for that specific use case. For example, if you're focusing on e-prescriptions or e-referrals or e-consults, that sort of stuff, or if you're focusing on, I don't know, exchanging of certain like clinical data or like lab results, those sorts of things, you get into now clinical and use case specific stuff. That's where is another type of FHIR specifications defined, and then finally, you finish it off by bringing these specifications defining system behaviors, um, um, uh, some of the integration patterns, defining apps or how an app is supposed to behave, or certain other tools, how some of these systems are going to be exchanging information, that sort of stuff. That's kind of the layer, that implementation layer kind of looks like. And we'll go into what all these specifications look like later on. So any questions? I just want to pause before I move on. No questions so far. Okay, so for us, why do we have both a CA a core specification and a baseline specification, why is it that we have when we get to that national level, why do both of these exist? Essentially, a baseline will help you align to that base FHIR specification and make it unique to Canada's kind of legal systems. I've talked about regulatory systems, some of the policy requirements, that sort of stuff. And it just makes it consistent by setting a foundation across Canada so that you're reducing some of the um, redundancies that can be present on how data is kind of being captured across systems in Canada. So that's kind of where we're setting things at. On the other hand, the national core is it's more focused on defining a set of reusable profiles, some of those reusable extensions, value sets, defining a set of administrative data and how that's going to be captured, for example, questionnaires. And it just kind of both of these help kind of us understand and capture data that's more standardized, helps with interoperability, that sort of stuff. And it just makes it easier for specifications to then build off of that. A good kind of term to use for baseline versus what core is that baseline is kind of your dictionary for developers or vendors, so that that they can define some of those terminology sets or some of the consistent profiles that will be used in Canada. And then when you get to a core specification, it's defining more rules on how to use those profiles consistently across multiple use cases. There's a little bit more conversation or definition on how it's going to be used, rather than just what is consistent across for Canadian profiles or data sets or stuff like that. Just gonna pause a little bit so that if anyone has any questions, I can go on. Okay. So what impact does this have on pan-Canadian specifications? There's when we have something like a CA core defined, as I said, it can be you're creating profiles that can be used across multiple that are reusable for different use cases. For example, for CA core, it can be derived into and has been derived to be used for a pan-Canadian e-referral e-consult guide. So there's a patient profile, for example, that's already been defined. That can be used, location, organization. There's a number of profiles that have been defined in CA core that can just be modified a little bit to use minimum modifications to fit the e-referral e-consult guide, and then you can use those same set of profiles to make minimum modifications to that to make it be used for patient summary, which is PSCA, and the uses there. And then furthermore, you can define a pan-Canadian e-referral e-consult guide, make minimum modifications there, make it specific to Ontario's e-referral e-consult guide, make it more relevant by focusing a little bit more on PHIPAA, um, make it more PHIPAA focused, make sure that you're kind of looking into other jurisdictional requirements, such as Ontario wanting a little bit more defined value sets, those sorts of things, and you can modify um, those those pieces from e-referral, the Pan-Canadian e-referral, to make it more specific to the Ontario e-referral. And similar in a similar vein, with PSCA requiring those specific of value sets for Ontario, Alberta not being able to properly exchange patient information, um, or define what a specific practitioner is going to be, because they only capture, let's say, information about who's providing the service at a provincial level rather than at an organizational level. So their organization's always going to be the the Alberta um, uh, provincial authority, and going from there. So they would not have a practitioner, for example. So those kinds of things you kind of need to keep in mind when you're creating some of these specifications, and that's why like CA Core will have a certain list of information that needs to be consistent, needs to be captured at a national level. It'll make it so that it's consistent enough that there's minimal changes that are required at the Pan-Canadian level when it comes to e-referral and PSCA, and then you just kind of go down that level essentially. It kind of helps prevent kind of duplication and effort for if you're creating the e-referral guide at a national level and PSCA at a national level, because these two groups usually don't communicate too much when these specifications are being created, because the way that working groups usually happen is they're sitting and working in silos, but when you have a national kind of specification defined, it just makes it easier to add additional constraints on it, rather than kind of debating what's going to be consistently used and what the minimum requirement is going to be at a national level. I hope that's a little clear, and if I'm rambling or if anyone needs any clarification, please let me know on that front as well. Okay, what are the consequences of not having a core then? This section just I'm going to go over the fact that again we're focusing on core kind of helping us define things that are more useful for when it comes to implementation, that helps vendors out a little bit more, because it's going to be use case agnostic, or well, not use case agnostic, but like reusable for different use cases. So I'm going to use an example for medication request. Let's say um, if a vendor, for example, is creating an API for medication request, to help kind of send relevant information for the app to then process and then display the right information. The baseline will only cover, let's say, medication code, um, the medication name, some of the identifier information on it, that sort of stuff. But it'll exclude some of the kind of critical elements, such as what are some of the dosage instructions supposed to be, what information are we supposed to capture around status, or who's requested the medication, that sort of stuff, because it's not really relevant to because baseline is not really focused on, again, those reusable use cases, right? Because dosage instructions, the focus on continuity of care, focusing on status because you want to keep track of whether that medication's been given, that sort of stuff. That's not really relevant because it's for, again, in when it comes to a baseline, you're not focused on the use case aspect of it. So that's where some of that information is kind of lost, and it's not really helpful in kind of giving you a full picture when it comes to providing the care for your patient, and that's where core kind of comes in. It provides you that meaningful insight. So it'll kind of force vendors to utilize information that's going to be useful for capturing things that are going to help with decision making, helping with automating tasks, that sort of stuff. When you know the status, for example, of a medication request, you can check off, okay, so it's been given, and this way no nurse kind of needs to come in and reduplicate that thing, or so the medication is not given to the patient again. If you're carrying your patient summary, that medication will show up as, okay, this individual has taken their medication before, or this is the medication that they've been taking for the past 5 years for, let's say, diabetes. So we need to kind of prescribe the same thing over and give them that recurrent kind of prescription, that sort of stuff. This kind of helps to result in less missed less missed pieces in their continuity of care, and I'll kind of flag the necessary kind of care that they need, or information that they need. And that's where the importance of kind of a national core kind of comes in. There's more meaningful information that's being captured rather than just information for the sake of information. And so that's kind of how the baseline and the core differentiate. Is there any kind of confusion on why these two are different and why we capture them the way that we do, or define them the way that we do?
I can't see any questions, so I think we're all good. Irfan?
Cool. So what is C-Core? I've been kind of talking about it, I've been hinting on it, but let's kind of now jump into what C-Core looks like. And I think I do have a couple of tabs open at the side where we can kind of jump in and walk through what the C-Core specification looks like. It's a set of FHIR resources profiles, and a number of the value sets as well, which have been defined by CHI, a number of jurisdictions that have come through, and vendors. This whole FHIR community that sat through in Canada to kind of define what core profiles do we need in Canada to kind of achieve a number of the use cases. I know that I've said that e-referral was one of the focuses, one of the use case focuses. There's also service directory, there's patient summary. All of these use cases have been impacted and have necessitated the creation of CA Core. And there's going to be a number of other use cases that are going to come out of this as well. We have a pan-Canadian data model that's being created right now, and that helped kind of define what profiles, which resources we needed for CA Core as well. We've had Canada Health Infoway leading this work at the moment, and it's kind of being created for that very reason, so that we can exchange information consistently and more easily across Canada. Let me see if I can pull the right stuff off. Okay. Okay, so here is a look at the CA Core implementation guide. I have a number of FHIR effects here. We're going to jump into the profiles. So the defined kind of profiles here are a focus on capturing for capturing patient demographics, organizations and their locations, providers and the roles of those providers. There's the focus on clinical conditions and allergies. As you can see, as we're going through this, there's kind of a clear picture on what kind of what use cases can we potentially focus on and derive this information for Prescribe It, which is a national specification that's available. There's medications would be a really kind of good focus for them to derive things off of. If you're looking at e-referral, you can focus on, of course, the patient information, organization, location, provider, and their roles so that you can find the right providers, that sort of stuff. And then when it comes to doing e-consults, on top of everything, you would also need to kind of take a clinical document so that you can share that quickly with, or your provider, your GP can share that with a specialist easily, covering your condition, any allergies that you have, any procedures that you've gotten done, and maybe even some of the other clinical documentations that you may have, that sort of stuff. If there's a pan-Canadian lab specification that is developed later down in line, here's relevant observation resources that can be used there as well. If anyone can think of any other resources, please just let me know, and we can kind of go through and try and pick out here which resources are relevant, that sort of stuff. Oh, another care coordination workflow piece. This is relevant for e-referral because you can have you would need a service request from your GP to be completed by that specialist, and the information exchange between them that would go through a service and a task resource. Setting up appointments for e-referrals and e-consults can be done here. The communication between the relevant parties involved, whether sending you a notification to kind of come in and go to your appointment, that sort of stuff. All of these are relevant and defined, that are relevant to a use case defined in CA Core. And then we'll just take a look at what that looks like in CA Baseline. Now, the CA Baseline, it's more bare bones. It's been there's information that's defined here that again is not focused on very many use cases. Rather, you're just kind of defining what is relevant and what can be used from the FHIR baseline specification, and what needs to be modified so that it is more relevant to at the pan-Canadian level. That's essentially what the focus would be here. Yeah. Any questions on that? I can certainly paste the links for these specifications in the chat as well at the end, so that you can go and look at your free time to see what is kind of relevant here and what is not for you. You want to just kind of play around and stuff. Let's go back to. All right. Any questions so far before I move on? Now let's kind of jump into the conformance side of it. We've talked about how we cover selecting whether we're going to define a FHIR specification at a national level, if you're focused on a baseline or see a core, or a core, or even going down to that implementation level, what is relevant, what should you focus on, and why you need to kind of define it. Then we're going to jump to the other end of the spectrum and see how do we kind of go and test it and make sure that it's stable, and make sure that it can be used to further build on or define or clarify as needed, by the users, the stakeholders, and the vendors, in this case. Usually we do this at a projectathon, a connectathon, or a plugathon even now, where we focus, we take these guides, we take all the guidance in it, all the resources that we've defined, all of the relevant kind of technical information that's present in it, and all that stuff, and then do hands-on testing with it. And this involves bringing in and creating synthetic clinical data so that the vendors that are coming in, that are going to be testing some of these guides that they have used to create their systems, they will use that, use everything that they have defined in their tools to test against our clinical data that we have, clinical data sets that we have created for them, and test against it. And that's usually what non-peer testing looks like. So it's just their system talking to a data validation tool that we have, and making sure that they can test against our synthetic data and see whether they meet any and all of the requirements that we have set for them. And this is all based out of the either the national core or that jurisdictional level specification, so on and so on. After that, you can do mixed testing, so that this involves peer-to-peer testing sometimes, and it can be, so you test against vendor one tests against our synthetic clinical data set, and that's approved, and then they can then, if they've successfully passed that, do a testing with a middle person, a middle system, and then once that's passed, another vendor can, vendor two can do that testing with the middle system as well, that connecting system, which it's not a true peer-to-peer test, but it's like a peer to a middle testing platform, middle server that that has already passed our no peer testing, and or that we've created, and the two systems kind of test against this, but they're not testing each other's systems. They're not sending a clinical documentation that they have created to vendor A is not sending a clinical document that they have synthetically created to vendor B. They're just sending their documentation. The vendor A is sending their documentation to a middle server, and then the second vendors just pulling that data off of the middle server that's already passed it. So that's what a mixed testing kind of looks like. And then peer-to-peer is what I've defined, vendor A sending information directly to vendor B and making sure that that collaboration is happening and that both parties kind of pass the test of you being able to send that information and then vendor B being able to receive it. All of these pieces are very clearly defined in a specification. That's the server and the client kind of relationship there. But yeah. Any questions on what these testings look like? Okay. Here's a here's a better kind of diagram to kind of showing what I just talked about. The testing suite, the testing system that we use to ensure that we conduct the right non-peer testing is the Gazelle Test Management Suite. It's just it's one of the many suites out there. There's also Aegis available out there if you want to do testing of your system. And it's something that we've been encouraging um, in projectathons and plugathons that have been happening in Canada and across the world. I'll go over a recent success that we've had in Canada on that piece as well. So for projectathon testing, as you can tell, like on Gazelle, we create that test plan and the test cases. We have our clinical data set kind of present there. And we have a manual copy on an Excel sheet, glorified Excel sheet essentially, that's present for each of the monitors so that they can go step by step, profile by profile to see which elements or value sets are present or not and manually check those off. We're trying to automate that system for ahead of the next projectathon right now so that all of that kind of checking will be done automatically. But essentially, the test case, the test plans and test cases kind of defined there. And then we use simulators, Gazelle simulators, to create some of those servers that folks can connect their systems to. We have a kind of defined server ID and we have the right kind of credential system set up and everything there so that you're kind of able to connect to that as well. And then once the vendor's kind of ready to go, they just they send the information to the server, upload that file, and if they're able to kind of upload it properly, they get a check mark. Or if they're able to kind of receive that information, because different vendors can have different roles kind of defined as well. If you have your own server, you can receive the information, store it, or if you're a client, you're able to kind of send that information successfully. All of the sets are kind of set ahead of time, and you can sign up for all those different types of tests that are potentially run there as well. And all of this is run against a validator, which confirms whether you have successfully sent or received that information. And yeah, essentially that's kind of how we go about setting up our testing plan, our testing system here. Recently we held the 2025 IG Projectathon. This is the first major projectathon that we had in person in Canada. We had over 23 vendors kind of come in, do testing for the Pan-Canadian e-referral guide, the CAFEX, which is the Canadian FHIR FHIR exchange specification, the patient summary specification, all of that testing kind of happened, and we didn't just test the Pan-Canadian specifications, but we also tested the Ontario-based derivations of these specifications, as well as Alberta, BC, and other jurisdictions as well. We're hoping to kind of get all 10 provinces and 3 territories signed up and ready to go as well for next year. We'll see how many folks participate. Adoption in FHIR is kind of working well, and we're getting there. But it's still a work in progress, essentially, and that's why it's kind of important to kind of get everyone involved in this testing piece as well. We heard from the vendors that participated that they want to be continuing to do these tests and have these tests available so that they can do the no peer testing, so that they can see if their systems are compliant with those Pan-Canadian specifications or jurisdiction-specific specifications, so that they can continue testing throughout the year by themselves. And that's why we're also creating that automatic checklister, so that they once they meet all their requirements, and we made sure that they have met those specific requirements in each of the specifications, that they're able to kind of get a check mark and go from there. Essentially, that's the work that we've been kind of doing. It was the most successful kind of projectathon we've had in quite some time. It kind of those 722 tests that were executed from just 23 vendors. That's a pretty huge deal. Even at the international level, we had the Connectathon that happened. Oh, Simon, I'm sorry, I just saw a question.
Hi, Irfan. Yeah, thanks. Hey, I just had a quick question. What it's great so far. I mean, I'm following along. What you mentioned, no peer testing. Was that right? I
Yes.
don't really know what that is. Can you explain
Yes.
it a little briefly?
Yes, absolutely. So no peer testing means so if I'll walk you through an example. It's way easier for me to explain. So if I'm focused on, let's say, creating the Pan-Canadian e-referral guide. If oh, sorry, I just stopped sharing my screen. Okay, sure. Are
Okay.
you able to see my screen
Yeah,
here?
it's back. Yeah, it's great.
Focusing on the Pan-Canadian e-referral e-consult guide.
I see the 2025 IHE Projectathon.
Clearly I'm doing this wrong. Sorry about that. There we go. That's the correct one. Okay. Sorry, it's late at night here, and I just got back from vacation. This is a little bit of a roller coaster. So, can everyone see the Pan-Canadian e-referral e-consult guide?
Yep.
Perfect. Okay, so let's say I'm a vendor who wants to create an app that focuses solely on all the capabilities that a Pan-Canadian e-referral e-consult guide can do. So I will go in and create my my software that has all of the relevant profiles. So that means they need to be able to capture task information, patient information, communication, all sorts of stuff there. And they're able to also have the right codes in each of the drop-down menus. They're able to do some of the search capabilities. And if they just want to go in and be a requester of this information, so that they're able to receive information from your local general practitioner, that's all that app's going to be doing, right? So that's what they have implemented essentially in their and created their app for. Now, when they go in and they do they synthesize all the information there, we will create a clinical data set for them that has their relevant information in it. So anything that I can show in a bundle here. Let's see. Okay. Okay. Cool. Essentially, what we will do is we will load a JSON payload on a testing server. We will create all this information for them. It looks a bit of like gibberish here, but essentially this bundle is focused on covering a number of resources. The resource here is not defined. Let's say where we have the patient health, the patient information, their healthcare service that they're going to be using, and relevant location and organization that they're focused on. These four things, and the task that individual is going to be performing. All of that information is kind of defined here. The app developer, that vendor is going to connect to the server. They're going to receive this payload back, and they need to pass a test, a validation here that they have received and can populate on their site their UI that they're able to display all this information properly, and that they've received this. That they've received this information. Two, that they're able to render all this information properly and without showing an error. And everything's given an A-OK. That's what a no peer testing looks like.
I'm just curious because that sounds like, unit testing or functional testing or something like that. But what's the no peer part? I'm not quite up to date on that.
The no peer part is they're not they're not talking to, or they don't have to interact with another vendor that's doing the exact same thing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's the no peer piece of it. I'm not sure if that helps.
No, it does. Yeah, it does. So it's a way, I mean, there's a benefit of that well, it's up to the developer to test their own code, but
Yeah.
it's fast and you don't have to wait for someone else to test it. Although if you're testing your own code, I mean, you might miss things, right?
Yes, and that's why we have that validator also built into all of this testing, so that it shows them, okay, it'll throw in an error message if it's not complete or anything like that. I'm not sure if I have my kind of Gazelle piece still available. I can just go in and show you what that result looks like.
Only if there's time. I mean, that's okay.
Yes. I do realize I only have 15 minutes for this, so I'll be as fast as possible. Okay, just logging in. Okay, I am logged out of it. So
Don't worry about it, Irfan. That's fine. You answered the question anyway. I was just curious about the methodology. I thought I'd missed something, some new development.
Next year I will if if it'll still have me, I'll bring in those relevant screenshots as well. It's just a way for us to go through and make sure that all the must supports, that sort of stuff, everything is covered. Yeah. Awesome. Any other questions? And thank you, Simon, for asking that question. I'm happy to clarify and go through in as much detail as you like offline as well. Perfect. Okay, and the final piece that I wanted to cover was what can we kind of do after, or after all the testing has been done as well. This is just a final kind of topic here as well. I'm not sure which screen. I'm showing the right screen, right? Okay, perfect. This is the final piece that kind of just wanted to leave on is once all the kind of testing is done, what can we what is the art of the possible with some of these FHIR specifications that we defined. Essentially, because these are essentially at a pan-Canadian level, for something like CA core, you can take that specification, you can create your data model so that it everything kind of connects properly, and you can use that and match it with you can match that structure in AWS Data Lake, or also with Microsoft's FHIR Health Data Model on Azure, and you can kind of create your data lakes there to store your information in a FHIR format, and then you can connect or link your data from your database using mapping tools to map it to the data lake that can be put on any of these cloud servers, and create your relevant information, and then you can create LLMs based off of that, which can then synthesize your information that you're capturing in let's say for patient, and create dashboards like this to create summaries of your patients, or find or create a map, for example, that has the detailed information on where a practitioner is in a coverage area near you, and display that properly. And you can, what else can you do? You can also create summaries of some of the documents as well. If you have PDFs that have come in, and you have all of that kind of structured in a document reference, you can pull out the relevant PDF and use some of the CNNs to scrape through that information, and pull out relevant patient information there as well, and populate that into your data lake, and populate the right tables as well, patient information, that sort of stuff, or your conditions, anything like that, and test that as well. And then you can also, if you've created your data lake and you want to test that in a projectathon and see if it's compliant, if that server is compliant with the FHIR specification that we've defined at the national level, you can do that as well. And it's kind of easy for, well, I wouldn't say easy, but it's realistic for folks to kind of sit down, even without developer backgrounds, to kind of go through some of these specifications, read them, and pull out or create tables in AWS or Azure, or Google Cloud Platform, or if you have any other like free servers that are available, to go there and put the relevant information there, and create your structures. And you can eventually kind of bring that into projectathons there as well, and test your systems and see if that works. There's other tools that are out there which can do the validation for you. I know that Lloyd mentioned the FHIR validation tool. That's one of the pieces that are available that that can help with testing to see if you're compliant with the Pantene data model there as well, or a specification or anything like that as well, and go from there. And I 100% support Lloyd in putting any of your questions out on chat.fhir.org as well. I've been using it for years now. It's been really helpful in when it comes to me and creating any of the specifications there as well, or doing any of these testings and going from there. Yeah. Sorry, I've talked a lot and I've talked very fast. If there's we have 8 minutes remaining. If anyone has any questions, if I can provide clarification on anything or go over anything, please let me know. I'll stop talking now.